Secondary test 321 321.
Right, good evening everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Local Plan Committee. It is a special additional meeting we have put into the calendar to concentrate on the City Centre Master Plan. I'm the chair of the committee, Councillor Tim Young. Meeting is being live streamed and will be available to view after the meeting on the council's YouTube channel. To begin, there are a few matters of housekeeping. Action in the event of an emergency. There are no practice alarms planned for this evening, so if an alarm sounds, please evacuate the grand jury room by going back through the main entrance and down the stairs or via the staircase at the side of the building and then to the car park behind the town hall in St Ronald Street. We may have, I think we're likely to have a short break at 7:30 p.m. subject to the progress of business. Please would all speakers use microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphone, and would participants please mute the microphones when not speaking. As this is a special meeting to discuss the City Centre Master Plan, then have your say speakers on that will be taken just before the item, and general have your say speakers will be taken after that item has been discussed and a decision made by the committee. Right, introductions. I'm going to ask each member and officer to introduce themselves, starting with the Deputy Chair.
Councillor Michelle Burrows, Wivenhoe Ward.
Councillor Mick Spindler, Shrub End Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Paul Smith, St Anne's and St John's Ward.
Lee Scordis, Old Heath, Hive and Rowhedge.
Lewis Barber, Lexington, Braeswick Ward.
Darius Laws, Rural North Ward, substituting for William Sunnox.
Faith Smalls, councillor for Old Heath, The Hive and Roe Hedge, substituting for Kaylee Rippingdale.
Ian Turner, Essex County Council, Transportation and Infrastructure.
Evening everybody, I'm Richard Walker, Head of Parking for Colchester and North Essex Parking Partnership.
Good evening, Matthew Brown, Colchester City Council Economic Regeneration Manager.
Bethany Jones, Principal Planning Policy Officer.
Karen Syrett, Joint Head of Planning at Colchester.
And Simon Cairns, also Joint Head of Planning at Colchester.
Robert Carmichael, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. Just Simon Davidson, our Sustainability and Climate Change Manager, is also joining us via Zoom. If he's listening in, and if any questions about active travel or sustainability can be addressed to Simon. Substitutions are just really confirmed. They are Councillor Laws for Councillor Sunnox and Councillor Smalls for Councillor Rippingdale. Okay, item 3, urgent items, are there any? There are none. Any declarations of interest from members present? Nope. Yes, Councillor Barber.
Sorry, I may have an interest in that. I sat on the steering group on behalf of Essex County, or one of the members from Essex County Council, so I don't know actually if I am allowed to vote tonight as a result.
I haven't heard from the monitoring officer that you're not, so I presume that you can.
Okay, thanks.
Any others? Minutes, there aren't any minutes presented for approval at this special meeting, so we will now move on very quickly to our item on the Colchester City Centre Master Plan. I don't know, Simon, if you want to do the introduction before the have your say speakers, or wait until they've spoken. What would you rather do?
The choice is yours, Chair. Well, I'm fine either way.
I think we'll have the speakers first then. Thank you very much. The first one is the Reverend Chris Smith, and he's coming through virtually on Zoom. Are you there, Reverend Smith?
Good evening, ladies and gents.
There you are. Hello. Nice to see you again. Can you hear me all right?
I certainly can, yes. Can you hear me?
You're on mute, I think. No, he's not. You're not coming through.
How about if I move a little closer? Can you hear me now?
I can't hear you yet. Owen, are you gonna? Can you look?
Hello.
It's
coming up on the subtitles, but we don't have the actual audio.
Is there anything we can do about that?
I can do my best to be subtitled for you if you'd like.
Jonathan's going to have a quick check. Reverend Smith, while we're trying to sort it out, do you mind if we move on to another speaker?
No trouble.
Oh, you just came through.
Hey!
So it only took that to make sure it happened. Reverend Smith, you do have 3 minutes, and if you hear it, a bell will sound after 2 and then again after 3. So whenever you're ready, your time will start. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for persevering with the technology. My name's Chris Smith, and I'm the vicar at St Botolph's Church, right in the heart of this master plan. And I'm here this evening to talk about the Britannia car park. It's not actually a car park I use very often. I'm mostly a cyclist. And when I do drive into town, I usually park at the church. But it's a car park that I've heard a lot about from local people. So I'm here tonight to represent the vulnerable and also those with reduced mobility. These two groups have spoken to me about how much they value the Britannia car park. Now, I also realise there are merits, there are financial benefits to building houses on the land currently used by the car park. The church would even love to have new neighbours too. But these conversations with local users do highlight that Britannia has a unique offering. Those with reduced mobility tell me that its single story, flat layout is really helpful to them. And the vulnerable, especially the elderly, they really tell me that they find the openness of the car park offers them a level of safety they don't find in nearby enclosed car parks. And I just keep hearing these same two things over and over again. I've heard it a lot from concert goers attending cultural events. And they just tell me that the Britannia car park is their preferred car park because of its accessibility and safety. And so my question I wanted to raise tonight is whether the master plan could be modified to leave the Britannia car park intact for the people of Colchester, or if the financial return from developing it really is essential to the plan, then could a portion be retained as a specific car park for the vulnerable and for those with mobility issues? Thanks ever so much for listening.
Thank you, Reverend Smith. What we're going to do is take note of all the points, and then Simon will address them when he does his introduction a bit later. So if you can hang on and wait for the other speakers, and then Simon will address the point that you've raised. Thank you very much indeed. Next speaker is Mr. Nick Chilvers. Nick, you know the score. You've been here many times. You've got 3 minutes, and the bells will sound after 2 and 3 minutes respectively. And the time will start when you press your button. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. The master plan has been promoted. It's hugely important, and you claim thousands of responses to the consultation. But in the end, you only have 106 formal submissions to this report across all headings. After reading the 92 pages, you have 16 from organisations, and only 26 members of the public actually went on record with opinions. Some multiple, but 92 objections logged and 14 in support. Virtually all queries or negative comments were rebutted, or not down to us, or already decided in an existing policy, or receiving attention in an upcoming strategy paper, so not up for discussion. Apart from the animation of the river, hardly anything conceded, despite a fair bit of wishful thinking by We Made That and the planners, and some real clangers. While a few of us took the trouble to engage and examine the detail, there are no visible contributions from councillors. Now, I asked about that at the September Cabinet meeting. The response was, members are crucial to the process, they don't lack opinions, they'll be at the heart of things as it goes forward. Well, so where was it? Was it all behind closed doors? Or is it because the promoters and officers can deal with us, but it would get stickier if all the councillors waded in? Did it not occur to anybody that residents might like to know what their own ward councillors do and don't agree with in the plan? Residents across all wards use the centre, and I'd expect ward councillors to be closer to them and small businesses than external consultants. Now, there are a few several worthy aims in this document, but Colchester is not the same as Amsterdam or London. I predict how this evening will pan out. You won't and haven't got the time to pick over and argue in detail. We'll hear the usual comments like, it's an impressive report, forward-thinking, visionary, a lot of hard work by all the experts, money well spent, congratulations all involved. There won't be any material changes, adoption agreed. And after all the fanfare, nodding it through tonight doesn't really do justice to this, does it? I say don't adopt tonight, let all councillors offer their feedback in the same way as we have, and order changes as you see fit at a later date. But at very least, if this document is subject to review as circumstances change, at least say it loud and clear for the record. Thank you, Chairman. That's my have your say.
Thank you, Nick. I can assure you that all the members have been through the plan in detail and read it all, and we will give our comments later when the committee discusses it, and Simon will address the points that you've raised. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Sir Bob Russell. Bob, you don't need to be told, so your 3 minutes will start when you press the button. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I think the first disappointment is that, as I understand it, nobody from We Made That are here this evening. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, I think that is shameful, frankly. It took me 6 hours to read the report from March, and I've spent 6 hours yesterday and today reading that one. That cost £130,000. I haven't yet found out how much this one has cost in the 10 months, but I endorse the comments that have been made by the two previous speakers. You don't actually have to make a decision tonight. The officers have given you a choice of approve or refuse. There is another option, and that is to defer, because there is no financial impact assessment being made. I would have thought something as this major should have that. What I have established is that this report is very anti-car. There are, I'm trying to work out, it's 4 to 1. There's something like 80 references to cycles and 20 to cars. And cycles are all positive and cars are all negative. Bearing in mind that those who come into Colchester, 65%, these are council figures, not mine, 65% come in by car and 4.9% come in by bike. And everybody who comes in on a bike doesn't contribute a penny to the council's revenue, whereas everybody who parks in a council car park contributes to council revenue. And following on the church minister's comment, Britannia car park and Vineyard Street, if you were to shut those two, as the master plan puts forward, that's a loss of revenue of £820,000. Now, in the report, it says there are 800 surplus places, but if you look elsewhere, and I've got the figures down here, it's 500. So there's a variation there. So we've got 3 minutes to come back on 12 hours of research, which is not exactly a level playing field. One thing I will pick out is that the council is proposing the closure of the bingo club in Osborne Street, Colchester's most popular leisure pursuit, whose membership is significantly greater than the combined membership of all the political parties in Colchester. And I'm not sure why the master plan, this London-based consultants, want to shut the bingo hall. And there's lots more, Chairman. In 3 minutes, it's not physically possible to address it. My strong advice to the committee is defer and get an economic impact assessment.
Thank you, Sir Bob. Those points will be addressed by Simon later. Next speaker is Claire Marsh, please. Claire, you've got 3 minutes, and a bell will sound after 2 and then again after 3. Thank you.
I'm only a concerned citizen, but I do genuinely think very hard about things. I'm not constrained by towing the party line, nor do I blindly follow the current mantras imposed from on high, and I am often right. I'd love to discuss the detail at length with you. This is important, but for now, these are my main concerns about the proposed changes to St Botolph's Circus. 1. The result, after a prolonged period of severe destruction and disruption, would be inefficient and impractical. It would represent a series of compromises, as admitted to me by the planners, which would be far from ideal for any of the interested parties, pedestrians, disabled citizens, motorists, or cyclists. Are you willing to sign off something this big, which isn't absolutely right? 2. The plan was validated, as is so often the case, by inadequate pseudo-consultation, in which the views of those who don't currently use the underpasses were considered of more importance than the everyday experience of those who do, referred to by operatives from County Hall as hard-to-reach groups. They're not that hard to reach. I'd be happy to share with councillors my findings about their responses to your plans, gleaned when I spent time in the current green oasis in the centre of our roundabout and sought their opinions, universally negative. I suggest you're careful not to confuse levelling up with gentrification and so alienate this swathe of your voters and also potentially annihilate Queen Street, arguably the most vibrant and hard-working area of our town centre. Are you sure you've been made aware of the concerns of all of your constituents? 3, the plans are generic, unambitious and represent an unworthy gateway to our city. They're not a patch on a splendid roundabout containing a sheltered area of mature trees and grass with the potential, given some clever adaptation and caring maintenance, to provide a proper distinctive welcome. I understand the temptation to take the town deal and levelling up money, especially in these times of wildly inadequate funding from central government, but there are so many strings attached that the whole plan is in danger of creating a stupendously exorbitant, hideous mess. By following the current zeitgeist of reclaiming the roads in an ill-planned attempt to tick the disability access, bicycle access, discouraging car use boxes, you'll ensure this area of our city is less efficient for all of us. We'll end up with traffic chaos, a soulless confusion of mixed hard surfacing, unused seating areas and silly sad trees in square planters. Hardly a memorable gateway to the city of Colchester. Your citizens deserve a plan which is intelligent, appropriate and truly inclusive. This plan is none of these. Don't confuse action with progress. It is your duty to be careful with our city. Have you thought really hard about this? You won't know what you've got till it's gone.
Thank you, Claire. Next speaker is Sam Good. Sam, you have 3 minutes. The bell will sound after 2 and again after 3. You're very welcome. The time will start when you press your button. Yeah, okay. When you're ready, Sam.
Evening, Chair and Committee. Thanks for having me. I'm Sam Good, Chief Exec of the City Centre Business Improvement District, and I'll pass the comments on which representative of our businesses and directors as well. So the bid is grateful for the changes made as some were requested within the master plan, with more of an important stance on the crucial element of retail in the city centre, which definitely wasn't noted in the first version. However, we would have liked it to reference the recently launched Future of Retail vision, which unfortunately it wasn't. We're appreciative of the removal of the zero emission zone. However, it still leaves the car light proposal within it. We remain disappointed around the lack of information and detail included in the master plan and in general around the rapid transit scheme, alongside how other forms of transport are to be improved prior to looking at car reduction plans. I raised at a recent meeting with council officers around the potential to create a place that is unaffordable for the majority of our city centre employees to work here. The majority of these employees are in low-paying jobs within retail and leisure, but are crucial to the make-up and economy in the city centre. Without the ability to employ effectively, our businesses will be placed on a back foot. We've approached Essex to consider throwing the kitchen sink at getting workers to use the new RTS and Park and Ride, but with little to no initiative or willpower to make it happen, sadly. Give them a period of free travel to show its benefits and continue this with incentive of discounted parking for bid members. Without dangling the carrot, employees will either continue to travel by car or simply leave their jobs and move elsewhere. Cost and convenience are king after all. We've been vocal about the removal of Vineyard Car Park and Britannia Car Park in the past, and this remains. If we have excess parking spaces at time throughout the year, instead of looking at how we can reduce these car parking spaces, why are we not prioritising a plan as to how we can fill these empty parking spaces? Bringing more income into the City Council and bringing more people to spend in the local economy. We fully appreciate that this is a city centre master plan, but when looking at transport, why is there not a city-wide consideration? The objectives set for the city centre are not matched for Northern Gateway, Tollgate and beyond. The losers are therefore the city centre. If the objective is about offering choice, then why are we only doing this for the city centre? It creates an unfair balance in favour of privatised retail parks, which are car-centric, including Northern Gateway, which has just been built by the council, including drive-throughs and free parking. Are there plans for these areas to become car light also, and is there consideration to enforce car parking charges on these too? On a final note, however, funding is fantastic and we must continue to explore options for additional funding. Whatever master plan is adopted, we cannot stress enough the importance not to chase the money and use the master plan as the basis for applying for money. This way, we're not just digging into random pots here and there and creating a bit part approach. On a final note, I would like to thank Councillor King and officers who have met with us on several occasions. The discussions have been very proactive and we look forward to continuing that discussion more. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Very much. Next speaker is John Burton, please. John, you have 3 minutes. Bells after 2 and 3. Time will start when you press the button. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of Colchester Civic Society. We've been encouraging your officers and some councillors to provide a master plan. So we welcome the work that's been done, but I'm afraid to say we are very disappointed with the result. We are disappointed because the master plan ignores the fact that Colchester City must be a financially viable place. The recommendations of the master plan have not been financially appraised, and we feel that in its current form, the master plan may escalate the poor financial position this city is in. We recognise it's not just Colchester that has financial difficulties, but like you, our focus is on our city. We urge that the master plan is deferred until we've received financial impact reports on the proposals. As for consultations, our membership was very disappointed, as despite your officers' hard work, all meetings about the master plan have been dominated by Essex County Council highways issues and the need by Jacobs Ringway, your contractor, to meet the highway brief, have been the major focus of these meetings. As you read the master plan, you will conclude that the consultants have not looked at the city as a whole, but have been directed to look at the sites owned by Colchester City Council or Essex County Council. The Civic Society advises that the whole of the city should be master planned, including sites in private ownership, in order to maximise the city's appeal to retailers, tourists and residents. As a council, you have seen how strong the objections were to Crouch Street Highways proposals, and we feel equally strong about East Hill proposals, giving cyclists priority. I am a cyclist and often cycle to Wivenhoe via the university. I drop down from the Dutch Quarter to the river and cycle that beautiful route along the river. Why does the council want to use East Hill instead and cramp the city to shoppers, tourists and those who live more and more in the city centre? The Civic Society would like to debate with councillors as well as officers on a far more comprehensive master plan, which ensures we strengthen what we have now and then prepare for the future. Please do not approve the plan before you, but simply defer a discussion until you know the full impact of what it is proposed. We also advise that you call upon locals who know the city to give their opinion, rather than people who live far away and do not have the city's welfare in their hearts, to help you to produce the master plan, which is for our city and not based on studies of other cities which differ greatly from this very unique place. Thank you, Chairman. I apologise for having to criticise the document the councillors have produced, but I do so on behalf of the Civic Society members who, like you, want the best for the city. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, John. Next speaker is Dorian Kelly. Dorian, you pretty old hand at this. You've got 3 minutes. Bell will sound after 2 minutes and then wrap up after 3, and the time will start when you start speaking. Thank you. You've just turned the microphone off. That's it. Thank you.
I'll just switch it off. Right, I'll try and keep this short. What you have before you is not a master plan in anything but name. It is in fact not fit for purpose. It contains absolutely no provisions for any kind of overall scheme designed to shape and regulate Colchester's future. I would go so far as to say Colchester's only realistic short-term and long-term future as a commercially and socially valuable international tourism, cultural and heritage destination, which will be our lifeblood and a massive source of income, jobs and pride. We've literally not very much else to bring in large sums of money. We're not a manufacturing town. We don't have any distribution hubs. Commuting isn't huge. We're not a seaport or an airport. We're not on the main road to anywhere. And we are, however, the biggest settlement in the region apart from Norwich, and we've got more attractions and events than the rest put together. These cultural and heritage jobs are our biggest single source of paid employment, and one in which the retained economic advantage is very high, unlike the low-paid nighttime economy where the profit multiplication factor is quite low. Tourism is sheer profit. This master plan significantly fails to give this importance it deserves. In fact, although layer 5 on the list is to enhance the cultural offer, it doesn't actually suggest any proactive route to this. Now, I and many other people, as it turns out, wrongly, assumed that the master plan was intended to create a framework for what Colchester will be like in 5 years, 10 years, 100 years from now, and delineate the actions required to make this happen. And indeed, I'm sure the authors think that's exactly what they've done, but they haven't. It's merely a list of stuff that needs doing, like organising buses and bike lanes and showing where yet more flats can be stuffed in. That's literally their job, and whilst it needs writing down, it does nothing towards innovation and providing a role model for other communities, let alone creating new incomes. We hoped it would provide us with some teeth to be able to control things like height, massing, colour, materials, lighting, and crucially, the purpose of any given building, and ensuring that no development within the old city walls, which did not enhance, or worse, did not actively work against this overall vision, would not be permitted. And anything which would give a reason to come to our town centre would be encouraged. And importantly, opportunity to think differently, to be able to make our town centre a place distinctive and welcoming and culturally stimulating enough for it to get national and international reputation as a must-see destination like York, Chester, Winchester, Lincoln or Ely. I think that's where I'll stop there.
Thank you, Dorian. That's very good. Thank you very much. I've got 3 visiting councillors to hear from before we move to Simon. First one is Councillor Dave Harris. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, Chairman and members. Pleased to be here to talk to you about this. Page 14, I read this document a couple of times. It refers to the Tendring Garden, the Borders community, New Garden community, and the Middlewick area, both of which I just wanted to refer to in passing. Colchester for me is a jigsaw. All the bits of the jigsaw fit together to make the whole, and we're creating a master plan here, and I'm very happy with the fact that you're actually on the road to getting a master plan, and I'm hoping that all the comments made tonight, and I'm sure they will be under your chairmanship, Chair will make sure that bolts onto and amends and adapts where required. For me though, I want to base what I'm going to say on the environment and sustainability paragraph that refers to the Tendring borders. For me, that's good that it's linked and it mentions that in this master plan, because leaving that out would be a mistake. And I think the fact you've mentioned it will make sure that's not forgotten in years to come, because it will develop. So infrastructure first for that, with the rapid transport and all the things that will happen to make that community part of the whole, this jigsaw has talked about, will be good. Middlewick, of course, on the other side of the coin, Chair, you've heard me say it here before, I'll probably say it again, and I'll probably keep saying it until there's no breath left in my body. It ought not to be, I don't believe, in the plan. We know why we had to put it in the plan, because it's either vote for it with 1,000 homes, against it, voting for 2,000 plus homes, or abstain, and I did the latter. For me, though, that review process that's going to kick in any year now, any month now, I hope, will take that out. We've appealed to the Minister for Defence. It talks about, in this page 14, delivering that housing growth for the next 10 years. Infrastructure is not there to support that, I don't believe. And this jigsaw that I'm talking about will be lacking in that it won't deliver, bearing in mind it's just a short mile or two up the road to Middlewick to the town centre, the city will be a loss for that. So for me, I'll finish by saying this, and very carefully, my words I'm going to choose as well. The Minister blames the people of Colchester for trespassing the land, as he alleges. I dispute that, but that's what the Minister says. The Treasury has had a hand in this, of course, the government in making sure it's sold. We can either accept that or we can do something else. Now, I propose, and I very formally propose to you, Chair, that we ought to propose that the review process considers taking Middlewick out of this local
Dave,
plan.
you are beginning to test.
I
It's
understand.
the city centre master plan.
I know,
is what
but
we're talking about.
for me, this jigsaw what I'm talking about is linked very carefully to this. So for me, that's what I would like to propose and think about for the future. Don't build the master plan with these comments in. Let's review that as time goes on, as I'm sure this committee will do, and very well it will do well. So thank you very much for listening to me. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you very much,
Thank
Chair.
you, Dave. Thanks very much. Next visiting councillor is Councillor Sam McLean.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee and officers, and to all the members of the public who are here. It's good to see that Colchester is engaged with something as important as the local plan or master plan, both. I think what we have with the master plan is the skeleton of something decent, but I think it lacks in ambition in areas. I don't see much of a proper vision for some of our flagship assets like the Roman Circus, which I think is the biggest issue in my ward in terms of culture, is trying to get a good deal out of the Roman Circus, turn it into something that Colchester can be proud of and that attracts people from all over the country. I wouldn't be surprised if half of the people in this room or more hadn't actually visited the Roman Circus because then they just forget it's there. Going on, I don't think there's much in terms of vision for Colchester in the third dimension. In that, I don't see much in the way of protecting sightlines. Colchester's a very iconic skyline with Jumbo and the tower of this building and some iconic views from the high street to Jumbo, for example, is in a lot of photographs of Colchester that are shared when in tourist websites and magazines, if they're still read. In the plan, it talks in stories rather than height limits on buildings. 4-story limit on the building in front of Jumbo. Well, one story could be 160 meters. That's the size of the building, the 1-story building that the Saturn V was built in. So we need to be a bit more clear on that. Also underneath Colchester, there are tunnels that were built underneath Lion Walk and Culver Square. Could we do something with them? I mean, I dream of one day having a tram system which goes underneath, through the hill from those tunnels all the way to the train station. That would be great, but we'll never get that funding. Well, not with this government, where the only way we can fund this is by bidding for little pots of money, which are only partial refunds because, over the 14 years, we've just had money taken away from us by the Tories. Cycling campaign, please don't water that down. If the Colchester cycling campaign are not happy with the master plan, then I'm not happy. I want cycle routes that go everywhere, end to end. I don't want them broken up. I want them going both ways down the high street. Let's take it further. Why don't we pedestrianise the high street, make it a place for pedestrians only, buses as well, cyclists. I would take it even further. I would look at Southway, look at Balkan Hill. I would completely delete those roads and green them over and turn them into parks. Nice parks at Bridge, St John's Greens to the town centre, city centre, sorry, and St Mary's to the city centre. I don't think roads like that belong in a modern city. You wouldn't see them like that in, well, they're getting rid of them in places like Vancouver and all the other progressive cities around the world. So yeah, don't water it down, and be ambitious. You know, we're a city of culture. We're the best place in Essex. We're better than anything in Suffolk. We don't want to be dull like Chelmsford. Thank you very much. One last thing, Middlewick, stop the sale, stop the build.
Thank you, Sam. Next, and our final visiting councillor is Councillor Pam Cox. Thank you, Pam.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Okay. I'd like to talk about two matters in relation to the master plan. I think it does create a framework for future development. I am mindful of some of the comments that have been made this evening from the BID and the Civic Society about how we might need to push forward on some of these things. I want to talk about two issues, Roman Circus and what was called Painter's Yard or Lewis Gardens. So Roman Circus first. Similarly to Sam, I'm the councillor for Newtown and Christchurch, and as councillors for that area, we're absolutely concerned about the Roman Circus and its future, and I'm personally a long-standing supporter of that site. So I'm pleased to see that the features quite prominently in the report, but I do agree with Councillor McLean and Sam that we need to make more of it. So pleased to see the commitment to signposting from the city centre, to creating more direct access, pedestrian access across Southway and making the most of it as a heritage asset. But it's really, really important that this year, the 20th anniversary of the discovery of the circus, we are creative and ambitious in our approach to the circus. And especially when the site adjoining the circus, the ex-Abro site, has been sold to a developer, this is a really pivotal moment for the circus. So I would urge the committee and all councillors and officers to be receptive to creative and ambitious approaches to that site in the future. The second thing I just wanted to mention briefly was the area known as Lewis Gardens, Painter's Yard, between First Sight Curzon and the Minories. The report says rather less about that site than other areas. It's an equally important site in the city centre master plan, and as portfolio holder for Culture and Heritage last year, I initiated a process of granting a temporary licence to use a proportion of that site as an urban garden in a project led by the Beth Chatto Plants and Gardens team, a globally renowned garden and cultural asset for Colchester. And that was supported by the BID, the Minories, First Sight and community gardening groups, and planting's now underway there. The aim of that was to create a new green space for the city, albeit a temporary one, but the bigger aim was to kickstart a new discussion about the future of that vital space. It's been a wasteland now for several years. We all know the history of it, but it's time to grasp that one again, and I hope that this site will feature more prominently in discussions around the master plan as the master plan matures. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. That's all our visiting speakers. It is 20 to 7. I know that Ian has to go at 7:15. So Simon, you might want to take part of that, because I'm sure the members of the committee, and there were some highways aspects brought up by our Have Your Say speakers. So yeah, so members of the committee, if you've got questions for Ian, can you get them in early after Simon's introduction? Over to you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chair. I will try and make this brief as possible. Some of the slides I will use as prompts, so I will just share my screen now and move on to the presentation. Okay, good evening, members of the public. We're here obviously this evening to consider the formal adoption of the master plan following extensive public engagement both during and after drafting. We're looking at what was said, and we're looking at how we have changed the master plan in response to those representations. And finally, the final step to adoption as supplementary planning document. Here we have a table which really demonstrates the depth of that engagement, Chair. Following the ending of the formal 6-week consultation period at the end of July, as you can see, there is a very varied and numerous schedule of consultation which has taken place to inform and further revise the plan. So why we need a master plan very quickly? Obviously, the city centres are changing at a very rapid pace. We need to build on our assets, and I think many of the speakers have raised this. We need to reinforce what's unique about Colchester in terms of both heritage and place, and we need to identify those key areas for redevelopment and regeneration. We need to deliver key policy objectives from the wider local plan, including regeneration, obviously the provision of new homes, and promoting economic growth. Transport is clearly the key. We're here to, in particular in the St Botolph's Quarter, to promote a multimodal transport interchange and to support active travel in all its forms, but we are not anti-car. Environmental improvements are proposed in the plan, including greening our city centre and improvements to the public realm, and overall to enhance the offer provided by the city centre to promote footfall and expand the economy. We have explored ways in which the council's property and land can be used, and the purpose of the detailed series of briefs for those sites is to provide transparency and to avoid accusations that something has gone on behind closed doors. Clearly, that is not how we do business. And finally, we need to guide and drive growth to achieve the best outcomes for our city. So as you're all aware, we made that consultants drafted the document initially with public engagement, but fundamentally they involved economic input from specialists in dealing with how we actually steward sustainable development within major urban and particularly historic city centres. We've had extensive engagement with our communities both during and after the first draft, and we have worked in partnership with our Essex County Council colleagues in an exemplary manner. The final draft thus incorporates key changes that were identified. So, as been mentioned, 106 detailed representations from 42 individuals and organisations were achieved. These are very, very lengthy and are included within the appendices to this report. The majority of reps overall welcomed the master plan and were generally supportive of its aims. Different interest groups inevitably sought to promote their specific areas of interest, and that I think shows how inclusive our process has been in engagement with the public. We need to reconcile these competing views in the wider public interest, and that fundamentally is what planning is about. There is a misunderstanding on the nature of the document. It is intended to inform the planning process. It is not a costed action plan with rigid milestones for delivery. Change will occur incrementally and facilitated by a mosaic of planning application for development and public funding streams, including already the Town Deal and the Luff, which Matthew Brown is here to talk about in terms of very positive outcomes that the plan has arguably already yielded. The transport plan is not being considered for adoption. It was part of the evidence base only in the preparation of the plan, and I would remind members that the master plan needs to be read in context with the other local plan relevant policies and other related SPDs. So moving on.
Simon, if you could keep the acronyms to a minimum, that would be great. LUF, you might want to explain LUF.
Levelling Up Fund, government funding stream.
SPD is supplementary planning document.
Thank you. There was a whole series of shared themes which we received, one of which was a general desire to see the whole of the historic core of our city included in the master plan and the geographic area of study extended to include the whole of the historic city centre. However, This was not in the scope of the strategy which we were developing, which is based on the local plan town centre policy area, policy TC1, but it does develop a whole series of gateways and functionally linked areas, which are considered as part of the master plan as a holistic strategy for the whole urban area. A key matter that was raised is the issue of biodiversity net gain, and green and blue infrastructure. And as you will see, Chair, from the report and later in the presentation, biodiversity net gain is embedded in the plan. We have updated the underlying core principles number 2 to include biodiversity as a fundamental underlying tenet of the plan. References to the River Colne as a key economic driver are clearly inappropriate, and we share this view, and the plan has been revised appropriately to reflect this. There was a general commentary around the national and local cycling and pedestrian routes being included specifically as a layer in the master plan. We would really refer to the fact that we have an adopted active travel SPD and also the Colchester Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, acronym LCWIP, which does deal with this matter in specific detail. It is a key point for the plan, but it is something which is referenced elsewhere with that level of detail. An integrated transport hub is not delivered by the master plan, but the plan does identify areas of search and for interchanges between different modes, but further work is clearly required on this area. So, as we've heard from the bid, there were concerns around attracting more quality retail uses to the city centre, and we would say that the master plan has been amended to make it explicit that there is considerable support within the plan for further enhancement to the retail base as a key driver of our city centre economy. Another point that was raised, and we have Richard from the North Essex Parking Partnership with us this evening, the issue of removal and loss of car parking from the city centre was raised by a number of respondents. That matter is considered in detail, and indeed one of the speakers referred to specifically the loss of Britannia from the car parking stock. There is a long-standing commitment for the redevelopment of these car parks in our adopted local plan, but policy TC3 does in fact confirm that in the case of Britannia, a neutral effect on car parking is required to be demonstrated. There was a commentary around a lack of design codes in the master plan. However, I would say there is quite a lot of design coding set out as key parameters within the master plan, which responds to the objectives. Each planning application that will subsequently be considered will need to justify its approach using landscape and visual impact assessment and heritage impact assessment. So, in fact, this matter will be given very detailed consideration as part of the ongoing planning application process. I would say that there is a danger around design coding in that it can be a blunt tool, and the plan does suggest some overall parameters, but confirms, particularly in the amendments that are tabled tonight, Chair, that individual assessments will be required to justify the approach taken. The suggestion of contraflows in High Street was supported by the Colchester Cycle Campaign, which is noted. However, any future proposals that alter traffic flows in our city centre would require further transportation assessments, engagement with the public, and modelling as part of more detailed design development of any proposal. So, moving on, how the master plan has changed in response to what was said. A detailed schedule of changes is set out in Appendix C to the report, Chair. However, key changes include updated strategic objectives to consider biodiversity, ecology and nature to a greater degree, This now reads as to provide safe, healthy, green, active and accessible city centre, and additional changes to enhance biodiversity are proposed throughout the master plan. And on the screen here, you will see some references from pages within the master plan, page 40 in particular, where both the River Colne is being celebrated as a biodiversity corridor, and indeed integrating improvements to the wider public realm and environment of the city centre, including biodiversity, is now shown as a key driver of the master plan layer. So, again, references to the River Colne are now really completely turned on the head and shown as biodiversity enhancement proposals on page 45. So, proposals to relating to Essex County Council's detailed scheme of redesign for St Botolph's Circus. As you can see, Chair, from the image now on the screen, it has changed from a junction to a roundabout proposal, again with a green heart to that feature, but with improved cross points for pedestrians and greater connectivity linking the city centre to the southern hinterland. And that's a matter, obviously, Councillor Cox has just referred to the importance of achieving that. So further changes include clarity around the new Roman Wall Park, which is seen as being an integrated feature running round areas of the wall to provide both an enhanced setting to the wall and further environmental and biodiversity gains to that internationally important feature. And again, confirmation that we will support the retention and promotion of retail use in the city centre are set out on page 48. So, to conclude, what does the master plan achieve? It adds value to the development process and sets out explicit expectations for developers. It ensures we deliver the best outcomes from development and change through a holistic strategy for sustainable growth. It provides a shared vision for our city and a basis for future grant bids. It provides transparency and inclusion in determining the future of some key redevelopment sites within the city centre, which are unique insofar as they involve redevelopment rather than incremental change. A number of speakers identified why were they specifically drawn out as key sites with detailed briefs in the plan. The reason for that is that they are comprehensive redevelopment sites. Unlike the rest of the city centre, which being a conservation area, we would seek to see the existing fabric preserved and enhanced rather than clear felled and redeveloped. So in terms of the opportunities which have flowed from the master plan, Matthew Brown, our Economic Regeneration Manager, has joined us this evening and will explain how exactly these changes brought or predicted by the draft plan have already yielded substantive benefits for our city centre.
Thank you, Simon. Over to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Simon. Next slide, please, Simon. Right, so I'm just going to go back a few years to the Town Investment Plan, which was established in 2020 and approved by We Are Colchester Board. And subsequent to that, as Simon's already suggested, we've had £19.6 million Levelling Up Fund, £90.2 million of town deal funding, and other funding as well. So there's been active travel funding, safer streets funding, all of which is focused on improving the city centre. And you've got some things here we're looking at, trying to really drive that vibrancy, drive that footfall, make it a really iconic place that really, looks at its heritage as a kind of, an enabler to kind of economic development and growth. Next slide, please. Okay, so what you'll see in the master plan is quite a few references which cut across what we've done for the town investment plan, what we've put in those bids subsequently for Town Deal and Levelling Up Fund, which are, you know, about the vibrancy, about the economy, the tourism. We've people have mentioned tourism. I'm trying to enable that and make the city as attractive as it can be. And also recognise our heritage, recognise the importance that plays in the distinctiveness, and actually, you know, that's a real unique selling proposition for Colchester. I'm going to keep the rest of it quite simple and visual, so I'm just going to talk at a few slides which are mostly picture-based, because it's quite nice and visual and compelling, and we have drawings and designs done for a lot of these schemes already. So what we have on this screen now is several of the squares, public squares, that are going to be enhanced or improved. So public realm, public space is vitally important to that renewal, that kind of investment, making the city more attractive, making it work better, making it, you know, safer. So you have there on the left, you have Trinity Square, you have on the right St Nicholas Square, and you have in the centre and bottom right illustrations of curbless streets, which we'll see Sir Isaac's Walk and Short Wide Street made curbless or flat, so that improves accessibility and safety. On this slide, I've got some examples. In the centre and middle and sort of top and centre of that, what you can see is a walking route between Colchester Town Station and First Sight, passing through the Priory Gardens, passing through Priory Street, which is being funded under the Levelling Up Fund, which will just enhance that whole area, make it nice and make it work as a route. So tourists arriving particularly by train, but also by other modes of transport, have a nice, well signposted, very visual route into the city centre that actually showcases some assets which are currently neglected and not really highlighted. Also, briefly on that slide, you'll see bottom left Jumbo, which is currently developing its round 2 bid to the National Lottery Heritage Fund to restore and repair the tower and bring it into use as a kind of a visitor attraction. On the far right of the screen, we're awaiting news from the National Lottery Heritage Fund regarding Holy Trinity Church, which again, we want to bring it back into use as a community centre to restore the building and give it a safe and secure future. So heritage, as you can see from this, very much in the centre of our plans. Next slide, please. So as has been suggested, quite a lot of focus on the area around St Botolph's Circus, Vineyard Street, Britannia Way, because this is the area of the city centre which we feel, you know, needs the most rejuvenation. So to date, we've had quite a lot of ideas, designs developed and consulted. You can see the one there of how the area in front of St Botolph's Station will look in a few years' time. It's going to be much more attractive, safer, and just a nice place to be. And next slide, please. And the final slide for me is as well as making it a nice place making, we're also focusing on economic impacts as well. And in this instance, at 43 Queen Street, which is the site of the former bus garage, before that it was the site of the Theatre Royal, there was going to be a new building. Construction has actually started now. And it will be completed in about 12 months, just over. And what we'll have there is a centre for businesses in the digital industries. And that is very exciting because it will just bring new jobs in, stimulate existing businesses to grow and expand and take on more employees. And to the bottom right, we have an example of a virtual heritage experience, which will focus initially at Colchester Castle. So innovation in tourism through digital, enabled through digital means. I think that's it. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Chair. That brings our very brief and somewhat hurried presentation, I do apologise, to an end, Chair. We have Ian Turner with us from Essex County Highways to answer any questions in relation to the proposed changes to the St Botolph's Circus junction. We also have Richard Walker from the NEP, North Essex Parking Partnership, to explain changes around our car parking strategy for the city centre and the emerging new strategy. And as you've already met, Matthew Brown has outlined some of the key economic development projects which are already potentially flowing from the funding which has been attracted partially as a result of the emerging master plan. I'm very happy to run through the matters raised by speakers, Chair, but I wonder if we should allow any questions from members maybe in advance of those responses on highway matters in particular, because unfortunately, Ian, we only have his company for a limited period. So I think it would be helpful potentially to allow members to ask any questions specifically in relation to the St Botolph's Circus element of the master plan before we go back to the matters raised by visiting members and speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As we only have Ian for another 15 minutes, perhaps he can start by addressing some of the points raised by Claire Marsh and others, and then I will ask members to see if they've got any points on highways.
No problems. Should be able to stretch out to 2025 past. You may see me galloping out of here, but that should be okay. So I tried to sort of take some notes as I was going through with the questions. From the St Botolph's perspective, it currently reflects a very highway-dominated layout that doesn't support inclusive or high-quality place, and isn't really a particularly attractive gateway into the city centre. And not providing for all modes of travel, in some cases actually reflecting a barrier to different movements at the current moment. What we're looking at, the new scheme that we provided, looks to develop and address those issues for a layout that continues to still work from a traffic perspective, but provides an improved public realm space, improved connectivity for all users and all modes of travel, particularly addressing issues of the connectivity that we have from the south. We look also to lay the foundations for further bus change improvements as the area continues to regenerate under the city centre master plan. So looking at that, improving the connectivity in the transportation interchanges in particular, and obviously into the city centre. As I said, recognising that we still want to maintain highway capacity, we've looked to do that, and obviously we've reviewed and come back with the elliptical roundabout design layout there. Regenerate tied infrastructure assets. So again, the LUF funding as well provides us the opportunity to renew, resurface, repave, looking at it from the conservation area perspective as well as to how we can improve this, again, as that gateway aspect. Looking at how we can maximise the public realm spaces, increasing the amount of public realm area, improve planting, opportunities for just generally making it a more attractive location. And also initial modelling is indicating that the full signalisation associated with the roundabout will help us improve air quality. So indications at the moment that Mersey Road, we're expecting some reductions in the expected exceedances there. There was also comments about the RTS. The intention is with the RTS, and as you can see, we're already on site with the infrastructure, and that programme of infrastructure will continue to progress through 2024, 2025. And it's about providing good quality service, looking at getting that journey time reliability. Also, that infrastructure is not just about sort of point to point, it's also about connecting up with other key areas of infrastructure. So, for example, connecting with all the railway stations as well along the route. So providing that ability for people to be able to utilise that service for employees, residents, and obviously shoppers and businesses as well. Comments about East Hill. East Hill does provide a direct route into the city centre. We are looking at improving the provisions along that corridor for cycling and walking. So it's not just about the cycling. And also taking again the opportunity to improve the infrastructure, so the quality of the materials that we'll be able to sort of like return back, resurfacing the road, addressing problems along there, opportunities that wouldn't be present without the opportunity we've got with regards to the funding we've received, about supporting the master plan with regards to improving the accessibility, but also recognising that sort of like, we're not restricting vehicles, it's still going to be a corridor into the location, so provide that local access. And also we can't forget the importance of that corridor and the increasing importance of that corridor with regards to the university, the garden community, Grinstead itself and the Heart of Grinstead programme there going forward. And then we also then had further comments, I think, about LC Whip and comments about the improving cycling network. So just on that, we do have a programme, we have gone through the process, we are following the government guidelines with regards to that, and we have recently just completed consultation, further consultation on walking and cycling, particularly looking at not just primary networks but also secondary routes, improving cycling and walking, and making just generally a better connectivity, and recognising that we need to sort of support all modes of travel, and it's about, from the point of view of the master plan, it's about creating, a sense of balance to improve accessibility for all modes of travel. It's about making places for people, creating more space, creating more footfall. The measures proposed within the Colchester Master Plan are very much in line with Colchester's own local plan, also the local transport plan, and the measures that are being introduced here are actually reflective of how cities are changing across the country in the way that they're looking to actually provide and maximise their assets for what is obviously the changing role of these various different city centres and centres. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Before I bring members of the committee in, the gentleman who's filming, you're very welcome to film us. That's what we're here for. We're up here to be shot at. But I did notice that you were filming other members of the public and you haven't got permission to do that. So if you could just restrict your camera work to this way, that would be good, please. Are you willing to do that? Gentleman with the camera? Nobody can hear you if you're not. I'm just advising you. Please train your camera on us, not on other members of the public. Not on other members of the public. Thank you. If I see you do it again, I will ask for you to be removed. Thanks. Okay, members of the committee who wish to restrict your comments to highways for the time being. I'll see Councillor Smith and then Councillor Laws and then Councillor Smalls. Councillor Smith and then Councillor Burrows. So Councillor Smith, away you go.
Thank you. What capacity have you got for future growth in the traffic planning that you've done? Because I understand you produced a very nice scheme. How many years future growth have you taken account of for in the scheme?
Ian, do you want to take them on block or one at a time?
Fine. So obviously what we've done, we've obviously have modelled the junction. We've looked at it from the point of view of modelling that location on the basis of no change, but also obviously the changes we put in place. The standard that we follow, the national standard, is looking at a 15-year design life. So from year of delivery through to actual year of following 15 years after construction. And that modelling has demonstrated that we are able to maintain the performance, the capacity at that location. And that does take account through the modelling calculations, future development within that. And obviously as more detail comes forward, if there is detail, then obviously we would effectively include that within the modelling calculations.
Thank you, that's very helpful. The 15 years, what percentage growth in population have you assumed for Colchester in that period?
I don't have the specifics on that, but as I say, those calculations and those datas and modelling inputs are calculated through national and DFT approved modelling techniques, so Tempro and various other aspects. So it is taken into account, but it also reflects the local situation. We use the Colchester strategic model that has been developed specifically for Colchester and obviously reflects the local situation as well.
Thank you. Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Chair. Ian, thank you. So in a growing city, one being reasonable has to recognise that you as a transport authority have a very difficult job, and we also recognise that retrofit is very, very difficult. My question is around the St Botolph's area, and I note that Braintree has a better bus station than the city of Colchester, which I find unacceptable. And I just wondered what the thinking is at the moment about the future gazing around a bus interchange in that vicinity, in the context of RTS, in the context of visiting coaches.
Could you just explain RTS?
Sorry, rapid transit in the system, in the context of that, in the context of visiting coaches, because we want to bring coaches of tourists here and potentially taking people from here to places like London, Victoria, that may need to be dropped off at that point in a car with suitcases to get on that coach or that bus. And then the final point I wanted to ask, because it's not really covered in this master plan, is are we alive to North Station? because there's an awful lot of land and an awful lot of airspace there. And I know that the current car park there, which is only a one-storey one, is out of action. So I just wonder if we are alive to all of those macro elements. And I don't expect a detailed response, but I just want an acknowledgement that you're alive to some of that.
Thanks, Darius. Ian?
Yes, so obviously we've taken the opportunity that was presented to us from the Levelling Up Fund bid. It's recognised that that opportunity came along, and the great thing is we're obviously working with Colchester closely on this. So we've taken the opportunity to utilise that funding for the regeneration of the St Botolph's location. So we're addressing the issues associated with the ability of that location, both as a gateway and also providing for connectivity across there, as I mentioned, the barriers and various other things in there, still maintaining the transportation, the traffic transportation. We're also sort of from the layout itself with regard to the public realm space. And the whole intention is that we're looking to use this as almost like as a foundation for further improvements in that location. So this one is very much located on the junction, the setting and improving that public realm space and making it more accessible for all modes of travel and the gateway itself. And then the great thing is that working with Colchester through the master plan, together obviously there's reviews of redevelopment within that location. And there is a recognition that the bus interchange capacity is not what it should be. And therefore we're working with Colchester and we will look at what opportunities comes from that redevelopment to look at additional space that can then be utilised to help with that. But we will have to recognise that Colchester will always have sort of a dispersed bus stop system as well. So you will still be utilising areas of Head Street, High Street, East Hill, you know, for example, coach stops and various other things across the city.
Thanks. Councillor Smalls.
Hello. I'd like, if possible, some clarification around the Crouch Street scheme, particularly the west side. So my understanding is that scheme has now been completely shelved, which I'm concerned about because Crouch Street was an important part of the active travel route. And on Crouch, on Crouch Street West, we're now left with parking that's herringbone parking, and that isn't suitable for wheelchair users or people who need more access. We're left with the subway, which again isn't suitable for wheelchair users. My understanding that for that to be made suitable would cost a fortune, and it would have to go all the way up to Gunton's, which would take people away from the shops. So I can see that wouldn't be suitable. Then the other option to cross over is the herringbone crossing, which again, that's not very good for people with buggies or wheelchairs. So that appears to have been completely shelved after going through consultation. So I'd like some clarification why that happened, because I'm concerned that we could spend lots of money getting to that sort of point with St Botolph's or something similar, and then that could be pulled at the last minute. So I represent people who live south of St Botolph's. So I don't know if you know the Barn Hall estate off Abbots Road. So I sort of knock on doors and, you know, canvass regularly, and, you know, they are keen for a change on St Botolph's, particularly wheelchair users, walkers. So they want to be able to cross it above ground. So, you know, somebody like me, I can go under, I can go over, it doesn't really matter. But my concern is for people who can't have that option. So to go back to the Crouch Street, that was pulled. How do we know other schemes that a lot of money is being spent on will be pulled at the last minute?
Thanks, Faye. Ian?
Yeah, I mean, Crouch Street, personally, I would agree with you. I thought was a notable improvement to the location. Also, again, provided us with an opportunity to be able to address sort of public realm issues around there. However, there were concerns about loss of parking at that location, and also with regards to the loss of the subway and surface crossing. And a decision was taken at that point not to proceed at this time with that scheme. We're now sort of at this point, you know, the intention is to come back and have a look again at this location, whether it's there or whether it's sort of at other points of there to improve that connection to the west. We will need to look at that because obviously we do want to serve the Stanway area and also the Lexington corridor. So we will need to come back and we will need to look at that again. But yeah, I would concur that there are some issues with the existing infrastructure, which I feel that we probably could have addressed with the measures that were being proposed. The St Botolph scheme, I mean, it's been a long-standing aspiration, probably going back sort of a couple of decades with regards to improvement there. The fact is we have got the funding. We're also, as I say, working very closely, so it's working closely with our Colchester colleagues on this. And again, I would agree with you on the points, and as I raised before, about the barriers that currently exist there. The subways themselves do discriminate. If you are able to use the steps, or if you feel safe to do so, then you're sort of looking at the moment at connections at sort of about 100 metres. However, if you do have sort of disabilities, or there's no measures for cycling coming from the south side, you could be looking at 300 plus metres to actually manoeuvre. And also we sort of already see people sort of taking the chance to actually cross over the surface, over the dual carriageway section of the route. And therefore that's unsafe in itself. So, we can look at this and we can design it up in a way that meets modern design standards through that. We've got a good level of commitment. We've got our preferred route established. We've been through the consultation, and we feel confident that we'll be able to take the scheme forward.
Thank you. If you could take one more, Ian, before you have to leave us, that'd be great. And it's from Councillor Burrows.
Thank you. You mentioned the RTS scheme out towards the university in Grinstead earlier, so I just wanted to mention on that point that myself and fellow ward councillors were disappointed that we weren't updated about the plans. We found out about it in the paper. There was an article saying the work was starting, and to say we were rather gobsmacked, just to put it very mildly. It's really concerning. Work's already started removing planting along Clingo Hill, which is doubtless affected in wildlife, and we're concerned that it's going to create possible water flooding as well, surface water flooding. There's already increased traffic around Clingo Hill. The Grinstead roundabout is near constant gridlock, and I speak from regular experience. Getting to meetings like this takes a very, very long time. All this is going to be made worse in the face of the fact the link road is not linking. The lack of linkage of the link road will create huge problems, which will impact on people being able to get to work, to be able to do their jobs, to support the economic environment and so on. Really worried about the time it's going to take to get the work completed as well. I can just see this causing years of misery for people. Thank you.
It's a bit tangential to the city centre master plan, but as a Grinstead ward councillor, I will allow it.
I mentioned it because you mentioned it, so I just wanted to raise
Please,
it.
Ian, if you've got an answer.
At all. So I think one of the key points you highlighted there was the problems that already exist on the A133 and approach to Clingo Hill. So what this actually does is this actually provides improved infrastructure. So we're not taking away any lanes from the general traffic. We're constructing a new RTS bus lane. That RTS bus lane will be able to be used by any bus vehicle on the network, so it won't just be limited to the rapid transit. That infrastructure will be in place. So the intention is that we're looking to so the work currently that's on site is about the advanced works. So this is about sort of pre-bird nesting season, vegetation removal, utility services and various other things. So it's not the main works. There has been notifications out, and I spoke with the infrastructure team and they advised me that there has been letters to residents and various other aspects. The web page itself is updated. We've also, this scheme from the point of view with regards, because it's funded by a housing infrastructure fund, and the preferred route corridor has been sort of identified since 2021. So the details for that and was consulted on originally. As we go forward, much the same as we've done with Section A, the intention is to improve or continue with the communication strategy. So we'll be looking to brief councillors ahead of the main works. We'll continue to provide notification to local residents, businesses, ongoing and issuing comms about Section C. There's been press coverage, so we'll continue to do the press releases. We'll also look to arrange briefings once the contractor's been appointed and look to talk through the programme. And as I said, there's the rapid transit website, And again, that's updated regularly, and there's all the details about the rapid transit on that site.
I will allow you to come back quickly, Michelle, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that feedback. But with regards to communicating with residents, I'm a resident of Wivenhoe Ward, and I've had nothing through my door or no direct email, nor have my 4 neighbours in my little drive, nor have my fellow ward councillors. So I would really appreciate if we could maybe discuss about how we might get that information across to people, because it's not getting to us.
And it's the same in Greenstead as well. Just make a note, that'd be great. Councillor Barber, very quickly.
Chairman, I will chair. I'd be very surprised if the local county member wasn't informed.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't.
Can we make sure that the local county members are informed at the least? Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ian. Thank you for your time. Please, if you could leave whenever you have to, that'd be great. I'm going to ask Simon to go through the responses to the public before we break, because some of them may have to leave. They've probably got lives to lead and an evening to have. And Karen, you might join in as well. Okay. But Simon, I know you made notes as all the public speakers were speaking, so if you could address those now, that'd be great, and then we'll break after that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, starting with
listen to Simon, please. Thanks.
With the points raised by Mr. Smith, or rather the Reverend Smith, in relation to the high community value placed on Britannia car park in particular as a safe and accessible car park, and the request that we leave it intact. The motivation is not one of financial return for incorporating that within the scheme. As you'll be aware, Chair, this is a long-standing local plan commitment to see this particular car park remodelled, both to improve and enhance the setting of the really important St Botolph's Priory, but also to provide a more appropriate sense of arrival for visitors and users of the city centre from the town station. In particular, as I mentioned, policy TC3 within the local plan does actually state that it should be neutral in terms of its effect on car parking provision. We are lucky to have Richard Walker, the parking manager, with us this evening, who will be able to, much better than I can, describe to you how our city centre car parking strategy is emerging to ensure that we have car parking which is in the best possible location and form to drive footfall and encourage use and convenience for visitors to our city centre. So if I can hand you over to Richard very quickly on this point. Thanks, Richard.
Richard, if you want to address the other points that were raised, particularly by Sir Bob and others about loss of parking income and the rest of it, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Simon. And do indicate if I've gone on too long, won't you? Because I can talk about parking for rather too long, as some of you will know and have experienced. Parking is in everybody's lives. Whether or not you use it, you will at some point have been a user of it. And it's a really delicate balance getting parking right in a city such as Colchester. You've got the historic core and lots of other different variables that are going on. What we do have at our disposal is lots and lots and lots of data. And we've had that for quite some time now, since the previous generations of machines. So since around about 2007, we've been collecting data. And we've used that to model and to develop offers such as that in Britannia Car Park, the site of the former Britannia Works. So we've developed that as a surface and to some degree temporary car park. Every surface car park is really, in any town and in any place, just a development opportunity in waiting. And has been explained already as part of the plans and part of the policy all along. It's part of our parking strategy as well to hand that over to something other than parking. And particularly Britannia puts a lot of strain on the highway network as well. You've got quite a large car park there in intensive turnover use, putting out a lot of traffic onto that same St Botolph's roundabout. The same as Vineyard Street car park turns out onto, the same as St John's car park turns out on. So parking puts quite a lot of strain on the network as well. It's really important, as I mentioned, this delicate mix. It's important to get the right mixture of parking for the future as well. So that will be a mixture of surface car parking and both accessible multi-storey and more historic multi-storey car park, which is perhaps a little bit less accessible, but for those who can use it, is a really valuable asset. So we intend to develop that, and alongside ensuring the structural integrity of both multi-storeys that we've got at our disposal now, plan for the next 10 years plus in the same way that Ian's been planning for the highways network, and also for the eventual growth of the city centre as well. Putting all of this into our modelling, and we're now at about the third or fourth iteration of our modelling for car parking. So in the same way that we've developed offers for Britannia, we could develop offers for another place, some of which have yet to be revealed. We've got plans in place for a new parking strategy, which is going to come forward over the next weeks now. It's as close as that. And I'll take as many comments from this meeting as I can to put into that draft strategy, which will be circulated amongst members probably between February and March. So we're gathering information the whole time, but we're basing that on the data that we've already got. One of the other questions was around about the more vulnerable people who come and park in the city, and there's a lot of disabled parking around the city centre. And I understand a lot of that is going to remain as part of any proposed future development, even of Vineyard Street site. So there'll be a proportion of reserved accessible spaces as part of any future development there. And what we've discovered as over the time we've been planning this new draft strategy is that timescales tend to change quite a lot. When we first started looking at this, we were quite worried about Christmas 2025, but we've sorted out all of the different parts of all of the sorts of plans that have come together now, and we've got a really good timescale of the interventions that we need to make, and we're very clear on how we'll deliver in future long stay parking as opposed to short stay and shoppers parking, and different types and different provisions of parking, either by supplementing different car parks, be that the Butt Road car park or the new car parks that might come on stream as part of looking at other surface areas, particularly along Magdalen Street. We've been looking things that will come on and off stream as part of that regeneration process, leading ultimately to the development of the new park and ride park and choose site in the east at the end of the rapid transit scheme, which also will link into the north park and ride. So there's all sorts of different opportunities for different uses of land and different types of parking, and we want to get the very best mix of this really delicate balance right in the city centre.
Could you address the point about loss of parking income?
Oh yes, as part of our modelling, obviously it's really important to us to get the right balance and mix of parking, and part of what we're doing looks at long stay parking and short stay parking. Long stay parking tends to clog up spaces, and we need to get that in exactly the right areas and the right accessibility. But of course that can only be used once a day, the long stay parking. So part of our strategy is to get that mix right. We've also looked in our modelling, the most recent phase, very, very carefully at what would happen if we shut one, two, or any number of car parks. And in actual fact, the car parking disperses through the other provisions that are there. Some will change to other modes, such as bus and cycling, but the vast majority of it will move to other car parks. And our modelling suggests that some of that will move to St John's car park, St Mary's car park, Nuns Road, Osborne Street, and others throughout the city centre. And just to clarify the point about is it 500 or 800, we model for a typical day and a busy day. So that's where the differences have come. And that modelling is based on Colchester's parking estate only, doesn't include the park and ride, and doesn't include NCP. So there are other opportunities as well beside that.
Thank you, Richard. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, moving on to Mr. Chilver's comments, in particular questioning the effectiveness of the engagement strategy undertaken before, during and after the master plan drafting. It was referred to only 106 reps received, but I'm sure if members refer to the appendices, they'll see the detail and complexity of those reps. In response, Chair, I would refer back to the very comprehensive and highly innovative approach that was taken to the master plan in terms of the engagement strategy, which involved direct involvement with the drafting consultants, with interested parties and stakeholders. So both during the drafting stage, the public and interest groups had an opportunity to directly engage and make their views felt, and that is incorporated within the document. There is references within the master plan to how they have shaped the form and content of the plan. And in addition, during the period following the 6-week consultation period, there was further engagement undertaken. And I showed you a slide this evening, Chair, which set out the very considerable amount of public engagement. This was incredibly inclusive, from 11-year-olds, 16-year-olds, the sixth form college. We engaged with the Alzheimer's Society. We engaged with the Civic Society on multiple occasions. And I must say, I would instead say that the level of representations received probably reflects the fact that the silent majority are very happy with the master plan. It is a very comprehensive document, and hopefully the comments around members, and particular members' comments, and the apparent absence of detailed comments from members, which has been seen as a criticism, I think should be seen as a strength, insofar as members have been involved in a direct steering group for the plan, and indeed at many stages of the plan process have been directly involved in shaping the direction of travel. So I don't personally see there is any concerns around that particular point. Moving on to Sir Bob Russell and the Civic Society, who raised concerns around the lack of a financial impact assessment being made on the document. I think the anti-car issue has already been dealt with by previous speakers, Chair. And in particular, I would say that the document does not seek to create new policy. It feeds into and hangs upon key city centre policies within the adopted plan. In addition, as part of the drafting, there was input from economic specialists in the development of urban centres. It is primarily an urban design strategy and being adopted as a planning document. But I'm sure, as my colleague Karen Siret will be able to expand upon, as part of the local plan making process, there has been extensive investigation of the impacts of the plan on the potential economic well-being of the city centre. So if I can hand you over to Karen on this particular point.
Karen. Thank you, Simon. Of course, the master plan has been produced more recently than the local plan, but local plans and policies within them are, of course, intended to be both deliverable and developable. So by that very fact, they have to meet various appraisals that are undertaken at the time. What I would say in respect of this document in particular, and the call for financial appraisal, is that this covers a wide area, and it contains, as many of you have said, various aspects, various redevelopment sites, and we have no certainty about when they will come forward, how they will be redeveloped, in what order, what dependencies there are from one to another. All those changes in circumstances would have very big impact on any form of appraisal. So I think it's more appropriate to do project-based appraisals at the appropriate time, rather than undertaking appraisals now, which are really only fit for purpose at the time they're undertaken. So that, for me, isn't a showstopper for this document whatsoever.
Thank you, Karen. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you, Chair. I think the matters raised by Claire Marsh have been already addressed by Ian Turner, so I'll move on to Sam Good and the bid. And in particular, The bid obviously welcomed the changes that have been made, the re-emphasis on the importance of retailing and the removal of a zero emission zone was all seen as positive. Car light references are indeed retained within the plan, but it is not a pedestrianisation plan, as Ian Turner referred to. The importance of the RTS, the rapid transit system, has been explained by Ian and is crucial for delivering relief to city centre congestion and improving access to sustainable modes of transport. With regard to Vineyard Gate and Britannia car parks, I think Richard has explained that we are not simply closing car parks. We are looking to act in an intelligent way to redesign our city centre parking provision to make sure it is optimal for user needs in the 21st century. And with regard to other matters raised in relation to Tollgate and the Northern Gateway, clearly they are not subject to the city centre master plan and will need to be examined as part of the local plan review, which is ongoing. I'm pleased that the bid welcomed the public sector funding which has been secured, potentially as a legacy of the master plan already, and clearly the fact that the master plan would be a further resource in applying for future grant streams in the future. Really then moving on to Mr. John Burton from Civic Society, and again the issue of the lack of financial appraisal. I think we've dealt with that. In particular, furthermore, the issue of LC WIP 4 and East Hill. I think Ian addressed that. LC WIP 4 has been subject to its own public consultation and engagement, and East Hill does not form part of the study area for this particular strategic document, but the LC WIP for Colchester does address that together with our walking and cycling strategy embedded at the heart of our active travel SPD, which members will recall was adopted at the last planning committee. So moving on then to Mr. Dorian Kelly, who suggested this is not a master plan. He did not really evidence why it's not a master plan, and I would obviously reject that. I think it's clearly a master plan and provides a very detailed basis for the assessment of proposals in a very holistic and joined up manner. In particular, I think his concerns related to the lack of a strategic overview to developing Colchester as an international cultural and tourism destination. Colchester performs many, many functions, and it depends on the audience to which we are referring. It's obviously a place to live and work. It's obviously a place to visit, but we need to make sure that it caters for everybody's needs in an inclusive and holistic manner. It is not a list of stuff. I think that's unfair criticism of the plan. It does identify things that needs doing, but indeed if it didn't, then I think it would be fundamentally failing in terms of the granularity of detail. It provides a great deal of detail and does include a requirement for all development to preserve or enhance, given that we are dealing with the city centre conservation area that is already embedded and enshrined in our existing policy framework for the city centre. In terms of more coding being required and further work will flow from this document. We are looking into the possibility of a city centre conservation area review and further character analysis, which will provide potentially greater granularity of analysis with regard to distilling the essential historic character of our very important city centre. It is more than just tourism, though. It is about the wider economy and expanding the vision for sustainable development and greening of our city centre. It is a far more complex animal than simply a strategy for tourism would be. And I'm sure that is further work that our economic development colleagues could carry out. So moving on from Mr. Kelly to the visiting councillors. Councillor Harris referred to the strategic context of the document on page 14 and the tendering Colchester garden community in particular. I mean, obviously that does part of the wider context. We have a duty to deliver housing growth, and that is enshrined within the existing local plan and will be considered as part of the local plan review. So I don't think that there is more to be said, particularly in respect of Middlewick, which is clearly well outside the scope of this policy document. So moving forward to Councillor Sam McLean, and I would say that the accusations that the plan lacks ambition are unfounded. The plan includes a strategy to knit the city centre back together, to provide greater connectivity with its hinterland through a series of gateways and onward linkages. So it is very holistic in its approach and does not just relate to the directly to the study area. Protection of skylines is included within the document, and whilst iconic views are not identified, we would rely on landscape and visual impact assessment and heritage impact assessment on individual applications to give that level of support and detail relating to any particular development proposals. Story heights are proposed rather than height limits, and but within the amendments to the plan, Chair, you will see that we have qualified that to say they should be seen as maxima and they need to be justified in relation to each and every application. The support for cycle routes is welcomed, and the proposals to further expand the restrictions on traffic would need a great deal of further work. You know, the issues around connectivity, both to the north, south and east, and indeed west, all form part of the gateway analysis within the existing plan, together with the strategy for providing improved crossing points of those key barriers to provide better and improved connectivity. Moving on to Councillor Cox, and we are pleased to see that there is agreement that the policy document creates a framework for future development. The importance of the Roman Circus is acknowledged, but I would remind members that the Roman Circus has its own management plan, which is an SPD already, and the whole issue of Lewis Gardens and the Painter's Yard site is covered by a detailed brief and will be subject to further consultation when an application should further emerge. The signposting is obviously welcomed to provide improved wayfinding for visitors, and the ambition within the document is acknowledged. I think that just about covers it, Chair. Thank you.
That was very comprehensive, Simon. The only Karen, do you still want to come in, or are you? If either of you can mention Gala Bingo, I don't know if it's still called Gala Bingo, then Sir Bob Buzz Bingo now, it's always Gala Bingo in my head, then that would be helpful because I don't think that was addressed. Thank you. Karen.
Thank you. Yeah, very briefly, I just wanted to reinforce what Simon said really about consultation on this document. I have never in 30 plus years been involved in a document that has involved so much consultation and engagement. So, you know, it's very disappointing, I think, that people have come here today with a different impression of that. I think councillors have had opportunity, and there's nothing to stop anyone, if they wanted to know what their councillor thought of this document or any other council business, from asking them. There's been a few calls to defer decision making on this document tonight as well. I've explained why I don't think it's necessary in relation to the financial appraisal. I also don't think it's necessary in respect of the fact that it mentions Middlewick or tendering Colchester borders. That is for planning context, and it's factual at the point in time that the document was published. I've not heard anything else which suggests we need to defer decision making tonight either. Gala or Buzz Bingo, there's no requirement in the master plan for Buzz Bingo to shut. It doesn't even say the site has to be redeveloped. That is not within our remit. What we're suggesting is across the city centre, a number of sites could be redeveloped over time. You know, uses do come and go, uses move about, but there's certainly no requirement in that document that Buzz Bingo should leave Colchester.
Thank you, Karen. I'm going to take a break now. I can see from Sir Bob's reaction that you might get some correspondence with him about that after the meeting. But we'll take a 10-minute break. If we can be back in our seats by 5:02, that'd be great. Thank you very much. Members of the committee, you've been very, very patient. It is now your turn to make contributions on this very important document. Can I see who wants to speak, please? Councillor Laws, yeah, nearly all of you. So I'll go Councillor Laws, Councillor Barber, Councillor Scordis, Councillor Smalls and Councillor Burrows. In that order. So away you go, please.
Thank you. I'm a substitute member here tonight, so I feel like a slight fraud, but on balance, I think this is a good document, and I'll be happy to support it tonight. There are three areas that I would like to put on.
It would be great if fellow members of the committee could listen to Councillor Law's contribution. Thank you.
There are three areas that I'd like to cover off. One is more of a, a statement, but of positive intent and support, and then there are two areas I'd like some clarity on, probably from Simon and Karen. On cycling, I am getting tired of hearing some of the anti-cycling rhetoric. Yes, I drove here this evening, but that's because I live 6 miles that way on a straight road and I can't get a bus home tonight and it's -1 outside. So I had to drive here tonight. But many in the room will know that I do cycle an awful lot regularly from that location to Colchester. The reality is that the numbers of cycling in Colchester is low because we don't have the infrastructure to facilitate safe cycling. And our children have a right to cycle safely to school. We shouldn't just be encouraging it, we need to be enabling it. And that's why key arterial routes, east, west, north, south, should be delivered. And if we had done this in the 1970s, when some of the ex-politicians who are complaining about this today were actually politicians, like they did in the Netherlands, we wouldn't be having these conversations. In Utrecht today, half the residents make a cycle journey every day. And they don't do it with a ritual high vis and a hard hat because it's safe. It's just factored into their culture. So I think it's a chicken and egg situation, but on balance, I support safe cycling infrastructure that gives people the choice, because that's the key word here, choice. I was pleased to see what I guess is a codified skeleton, if that's the right way of putting it, around the Roman wall, because we've had some decisions made in the past that probably, as a consequence of implementing this document, we wouldn't have made. So I think about the field around Firesight on the inner side of the Roman wall, which is pretty much inaccessible. I think about St James's Rise, just by the church of East Hill, where there is a gated community there, and that part of the wall is inaccessible. And I see huge opportunities to have a unified approach to doing things such as lighting up the Roman wall, which we've done in part, but going forward to do it collectively, all with the same style, seems entirely appropriate thing to do. So I'm pleased to see that in there, and as an extension of that comment on heritage, I see on page 56 that we talk about making the most of Colchester's rich heritage, which all councillors are signed up to doing. I would be as ambitious as we can and look towards 2043 and look at one day having a desire for UNESCO status. This is all important stuff. I just wonder if this also opens the door, and Karen will probably tell me if I'm right or wrong, but will this open the door to an SPD supplementary planning document on looking at things like Roman floor surfaces and mosaics, so that we don't have electricity companies putting electricity cables on top of Roman mosaics. I would like the ability to instruct them to not do that, rather than to have to grovel and ask them not to do that. So I wonder if there's an opportunity there. And my final and slightly easy one is animate the river. I guess I'm interested in what the word animate meant. I've always been an advocate of making more of the river. I think that if we're talking about putting a splash park at Lower Castle Park, Boating Lake, and lighting the river walkway up like the South Bank in London, I can see the case against that. But in the context of biodiversity, yep, put some more reeds in at the edges, etc. But I still think we're missing a trick with portage and letting people kayak the river. The section that goes through Colchester itself is a very small stretch of what is a 50-mile river. So for the green folk that are saying you can only look at this from a biodiversity point of view, I would challenge that politely and say, why can't we have some kayaking for people that are perhaps even disabled, getting in at the old swimming pool, or punt from the old swimming pool as a leisure and tourism opportunity to get down into Lower Castle Park. And we do have a really big opportunity right now because Middle Mill has sadly collapsed. So we've got a fresh palette there to look at what we could do. That's me. Thank you very much.
A few brief points made by Councillor Laws there. Want to cover them off? Who's going to go? Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, very quickly. Welcome all the support. Thank you, Councillor Laws. Greater accessibility to the Roman Wall. Clearly, that's a key strategic objective. Making the most of the heritage, absolutely. In terms of Roman mosaics, one of the problems we have is that statutory undertakers can undertake work without our consent. Obviously, they require consent within a scheduled area. We could ask Historic England to look at extending the scheduled area, but it's very difficult when you're looking at intensively used historic city centre areas where we don't know what the resource is. But we could talk to them about that, and indeed will do, but it's a problem with statutory undertakers because they can just drill holes. In terms of animating the river, obviously we've got really important biodiversity there now. We've got otters, we've got water birds, all of which don't like being disturbed, basically. So that's one of the problems with the use of the river. The whole issue was around animating the river as a sort of economic driver for sport and recreation. And I think that sort of died a bit of a death, really, based on the advice and the consultation with the Colchester Natural History Society and others who made the point that actually it's a really important green corridor. But we could look at what we can do on a low-key level that's compatible, because as you say, it is a resource for all, and I think that covers it off, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for officers for report this evening and answering some of the questions, answering the questions that were put to you. I guess that it's challenging, this nature of this report. We've all had representations from residents who want us to do something about the centre, and ultimately that's where this whole project came from, which was joint working, trying to actually grasp the changes that were opportunities and challenges for us, and trying to put together a plan. And the issue is, as we all know, if we want to buy a house or rent a property, everyone has different tastes. So it's absolutely impossible to get uniformity of opinion. Thankfully, we don't live in a communist country, so we're not all forced to share one view. And as a result, we come to a compromise, and inevitably you'll have challenges to some of the proposals. But it's a starting point, and that's the key. I think that's the key point to re-emphasise this evening, is this is the start and laying out a foundation for how we can go from there. Unfortunately, we don't own every piece of real estate in this centre, so we can't just decide what to do with every piece of land, and that's ultimately where the challenge is, right? Because we have visions for certain areas, but we can't do much to, despite the fact some people think we're powerful, we can't just move and start purchasing and closing down bingo halls. And I see absolutely no reference to that in the report whatsoever. So that's just, I think, a point to clarify. What I do want to see going forward is more emphasis on the notion of the transport interchange. And I know that is the area where we have considered in the past that could go. And I would like it to be one of our key focuses going forward, that if that site was to come up for sale, we look at purchasing it with the Highways Authority to try and do something around there for a better bus station, because that's one of transport interchange, whatever it's called. That's somewhere where I know a lot of residents would like to see changes. I didn't ask Ian any questions because I felt it was probably unfair given, I don't know if Council Scores felt the same given we're county members, but there is some certain points I think worth picking up about the capacity of the junction to make sure. I think that's where we have to challenge as county members to ensure there's capacity in the junction for the growth. That's a fair question. But one area of highways, which is more of a political policy rather than anything for Ian to touch on, is pedestrianisation. I really wanted to see us pedestrianise the high street, and for that to have come out the work the consultants did. I know it didn't. I know there is limitations of funding, so we would probably need a significant level of resource to investigate pedestrianisation and model it. And with the RTS, one of the strangest points was when we were considering pedestrianise the high street, but at the same time a different team were looking at running the RTS there. Not we as Colchester Council, but various parts of the local government and government chain. But I would like, if we can, to try and make a clearer stance on pedestrianisation. I think as a public realm, that is going to be the main area where we can make a dramatic difference to the city centre. Nobody's calling for pedestrianised areas in Colchester to be unpedestrianised. I think that's always the key point. No other centre where they're pedestrianised do people ask for them to be unpedestrianised. No one wants to see a road through Lion Walk or Culver Square. So this is a good starting point, but as we progress the master plan, I really hope the authority, the cabinet, drive or push forward as their political position in pedestrianisation. There are more statements, I guess, than questions, but I just feel it's important to share my view on where this is going. I have reservations in the sense of I would like it to go further, but I also recognise it's a starting point. If I may, Chairman, just pick up though a couple of points on Sir Bob made about all car drivers contributing to parking income. I'm sure Richard would love that to be the case, but we obviously don't have every parking space in the borough. There is free parking at points at various times of the day, and by extension, if we are criticising cyclists for coming in and not paying for parking, does that mean we want to remove all bus users as well? Obviously, that's ridiculous. So I think sometimes in the debate, people with high public, although not elected, obviously clearly has a public role, it would be helpful if such language wasn't used, because actually it's not reflected the situation. Overall, it's a good starting point, and that's what we asked for, and we now can, I think if we all agree across party, we know the direction of travel and can start working on the details as sites come forward, etc. So has my support, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. I don't think there's need for a response, but thank you for your comment. Councillor Scordis.
Thank you, Chair. Completely agree with Councillor Laws on cycling. We do have to make it as safe as possible. I was almost hit off my bike today on the way here by a negligent driver. And the reason we don't see as many cyclists in Colchester is because we still don't have a joined up network, and we probably won't even after some of this because of the Crouch Street debacle, where we won't see the works there, sadly. Also, I think Councillor Barber makes a vital point about pedestrianisation. I think our big issue has been the bus companies. Bus companies haven't wanted to relent on sending buses there, and actually I think there are ways to deal with that and actually revitalise the high street, because I've never found it that good in all my time living in Colchester. There has been a noticeable improvement since restrictions were made to the cars that can go down High Street. We know that people are breaking that rule, but it's definitely not the days when the High Street was constantly backed up, full of congestion and really unsafe. It's definitely a lot better to what it was. I did want to touch on some potholes. I didn't want to trouble Ian with any questions of that so forth, because I've been involved with the process pretty much throughout. And as a county councillor for Newtown, what came up regularly when I first got elected was that underpass and that roundabout and how unsafe it was, the antisocial behaviour. People were scared, they wanted it gone. The initial proposals were just to fill in the roundabout, and that was it. And I remember going to Councillor Bentley, who was in charge of highways at the time, saying, whoa, we've got some designs from years ago, here's what we need to look at. And it's a bit different to what I would have wanted. I think we've compromised more than I would have liked, but hey, that's compromise. But we are seeing improvements there, which will help. I was very surprised to hear that Queen Street is the most vibrant street in Colchester. It is at 3 a.m. on a Friday night. Usually the Kebab Alley, I think it's called, but I personally think that street's a disgrace walking into Colchester, and it's sad for people in the south of Colchester that I represent that is the first thing they see. When you compare that to Crouch Street, all the nice posh clean shops, and you go down Queen Street, it's a completely different picture. On parking, I think it's very important, as Simon mentioned, that we mention again, Britannia car park is in the main local plan. So the time for people to bring that up was that local plan. And I think, to be fair to Sir Bob, I think he did raise it occasionally, but Middlewick tended to drown out most of that conversation then. So that is where it is. But on car parks, it'd be interesting to see this strategy, because I remember bringing some friends to Colchester and we parked at Priory Street, and they looked at me and went, "Is that the Roman wall?" I was like, yeah, it's Roman wall. And they couldn't believe that we had this amazing asset and we've just turned it into a car park. And then opposite that amazing asset is the Priory. And we've just made it a horrible, soulless car park, an empty space that's empty for 12 hours of the day when people are home and in bed. So there are questions about that. And as for parking access, we know that people can get to car parks like St Mary's and so forth without going into the main centre. So I'll be interested to see what that parking strategy is moving forward. And I guess the only disappointment is we haven't looked at properly a bus station, future bus station, or what I think will work better is probably an interchange. Whether we could have used the high street for that bus lane only, and using that as just a bus drop off. We just don't go for the bus station model, because essentially we don't have one at the moment. For example, there's no toilet there. You're waiting a while, your bus is delayed, you literally can't go to the toilet, you have to find a pub, might miss your bus. So there's some real significant issues there. Other than that, I think there's some real positives. I'm really looking forward to seeing more around the cultural aspects. Chair, you'll remember that we were on a task and finish group, I think 2019. Haven't seen any of that come forward, so I think we need to see some of that around the signage and so forth that's being proposed. To really kind of make the most of the heritage we have here. So for me, I think it's some really good points moving forward. I think it's clear also we make it clear that what is in this plan isn't exactly 100% what's going to happen. This is essentially a design for us to follow, and things will change and so forth. And as Councillor Barr was pointed out, we don't own all the buildings and so forth, so not everything's going to go to plan. This is just a kind of small vision of how we want to see us moving forward.
Thank you, Lee. Anybody want to respond? Mainly comments. Richard's not going to give us any clues as to what's in the parking strategy. You'll have to wait until it's ready, but he has promised between February and March that we will get to see it. Thanks, Lee. Councillor Smalls, please.
Hello. Yeah, so briefly, I'm in favour of the master plan. I'm very supportive of it. A quick word on cycling. I do worry about the demonisation of cyclists in some of the feedback. And I cycle to work and back every day, and I'm doing it for practical reasons. I'm not doing it to be an activist or to upset people. I'm doing it because I share a car with my husband and he uses it in the week, and that's like a lot of, it's just a practical thing. So, and lots of my work colleagues cycle to work, and when I cycle to work at 6 a.m, I feel very safe. I'm sort of just going straight down, and occasionally there'll be some reckless driver sort of trying to whiz past me, particularly as I approach a roundabout, because they know I'm going to move across. But then when I cycle home, I feel a lot more nervous, and that's because a few years ago I was knocked off my bike on East Street, and that obviously I was badly bruised and shook up, but the driver immediately had a go at me that I might have damaged their car. I was laying on the floor, and but that obviously, other people, it's been a far, far worse outcome. So I do worry about this. And then in my job, sort of later in the day, I'm driving a van, and it's not cyclists that are in my way, it's other cars. And, obviously, the more people on bikes or walking, the better it is for cars. And, there are lots of, in my job, I have to use a van, so I do use a vehicle, and lots of people with mobility issues and all sorts of reasons have to use a car. I use a car, but the more people you can have on journeys out of the car, that surely benefits other car users. To me, that was sort of, so yeah, that's about cycling. With the parking, obviously there have been concerns raised that people like the Britannia car park, they like the surface car park, they feel safer. So I'm wondering what the capacity is on Priory Street car park, because that's obviously walking distance. Priory Street is quite close. So I don't know if that's an alternative people can be directed to. I will, after Lee's comments, Priory Street has won awards, I believe, and it has made the most of the Roman wall. It is, so I believe it is lit and there's a pathway by it. So as car parks go, it's a nice one. So I don't know if there is capacity there. Signage, so I'm going from bit to bit, signage in terms of cycling and walking. I saw something interesting in some of the feedback. I don't know if it was the Walking Society or something said, for future signs, maybe an idea to, rather than time, so at the moment it will say town centre 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that, but to actually have the distance, because that's more inclusive, so people don't feel, oh gosh, that's going to take me a lot longer than that, I must be slow. So I think in future, I thought that was quite a nice idea, to have distance rather than time. And in terms of the retail and the opportunity for market stalls, one of my residents recently asked me about opportunities for pop-up, because they sell vintage clothes online, and they don't want, they can't commit to renting a shop space, but they like the idea of being able to do something for a month, and market stalls might lend themselves to that. Or if we have, or in between, if we've got places that are in between being rented out. But I know that's not up to us as a council, but if that was something we can promote, or I'd be interested in that. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. I fear that you will set Richard off on one, but Richard, I remember we lit it up, Darius would approve, when my brother was in charge, I believe, and I might even been a portfolio holder. So we have done things around Priory Street car park, but I'm sure you have got something you want to say in response to Councillor Smalls.
Yes, thank you. And we did win an award for its reimagination. Cars were parked right up to the wall previously, and it's much better setting there. And Priory Street's a bit of a multi-purpose car park. You've got all sorts of uses in there. There's uses for the school, uses for residents of Priory Street itself, and shoppers generally. So there's all sorts, and quite a large area of accessible parking there as well. It's a challenge to find different sites, and these come on stream and off stream. You're right, it's good to have a mix of surface car parking and multi-stories, although having said that, I've walked from St Mary's tonight and I've not had to go up or down any steps. That's completely accessible, and it's multi-story. It's quite a nice design, albeit has its own structural issues as well. The challenge is finding other sites like that, and we've looked along Military Road and out down the Magdalen Street corridor as well, and there's some sites in there that interest us, and some of enhancing some of the other car parks themselves as part of the work that we need to do to repair and maintain them. So yeah, it's about a mixture, and it's about choice, but it's also about opportunity, I think, and taking that when it presents itself.
Thank you, Richard. Any other points that Councillor Smalls raised that you wish to respond to? No. Councillor Burrows then, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to start by echoing what Councillor Law says about the cycling and providing opportunities to make it happen. I think a huge cultural shift does need to start being made at some point, and now is the time, I feel, because if not now, when is the right time? It's going to be never, isn't it? I would love to cycle more than I do, but I really don't feel overly safe at the moment, having been knocked off my bike a few years ago as well when cycling coming home from Monkwick. So I really welcome the positive steps being made towards making cycling more doable. But with regards to parking around the city centre, I just wanted to flag up an important issue that I'm sure you are taking into account, but I wanted to make sure I've mentioned it, so I know I've done that. It's about parking in and around the city centre for people with blue badges. Having a disabled parking space in close proximity to key leisure areas, such as the Headgate Theatre, is crucial to being able to access social opportunities, as well as the ability just to enjoy the life of the city. So if you're living with dementia, for example, proximity to leisure opportunities is key to being able to access entertainment and therefore take part in your community for as long as possible. So your mobility, your sensory input and your spatial awareness and ability to adapt to the surrounding environment can be affected when you're living with dementia. And of course, we know that memory is affected too. But so it's not enough just to drop off your loved one who has dementia. go and park and then come back to the venue to meet up with them. There are many reasons why they might not be there when you return. So with this in mind, I really hope that the blue badge parking, as near as possible to leisure venues, will be considered and be very much part of your parking strategy. I'm sure it will be. But just to finish, having spoken to various people with different mobility and access needs around parking, a few have commented that a visual map showing accessible parking sites and blue badge parking areas might really be useful. So when people get their blue badge, it would be nice to be able to say, and here is a map as well, that isn't online. It's a hard copy.
Richard?
Yes, thank you. This crosses the boundary between two of the hats that I wear. On-street parking is a matter for Essex County Council, but of course the Parking Partnership has brought that in, as it has with off-street parking, 2 tiers of local government different there. So yeah, I'll take away the points. Curbside parking, there's maybe some ways that we can look at shared use bays, particularly around Head. I think there's a loading bay, isn't there, along the side there. There's maybe some other uses that we can look at the curbside. And in car parks, obviously there's a proportion of all of the spaces in the car park is set over to be accessible bays. The map, yes, there is a map online, but it's online really because that's driven by the ever-changing nature of parking restrictions. But I'll look to see if we can get something produced there. Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you, Councillor Burrows. Any other member want to contribute? My only question, and because he's been waiting so long, Simon Davidson, I wanted to bring Simon in as our Sustainability and Climate Change Manager, just to comment really on active travel and whether particularly St Botolph Circus meets the criteria, and your feelings on it, Simon, would be very helpful at this stage before we move to a vote. So Simon, if you're I think you're still there, if you could join us and give us your view, that'd be really helpful. Thank you. You're on. We can see your name in lights, but are you there? So close, and yet so far. It's a dodgy song that I better not sing it. Here he is, Simon. We can't hear you at the moment. Can you hear us? Yeah. Does Jonathan need to come and work his magic again? Try again, Simon. No, perhaps Simon, given the lateness of the hour, if you could send us your views to the committee, to Rob, by email, that'd be really helpful. But thank you for listening in. Thank you for your time tonight. We'll have to sort out the gremlins in these Zooms, but thanks, Simon. Okay, unless there's any other comments, we're going to, yes, Councillor Barber.
Sorry, Chair. I was going to make one point. I think Karen did pick up on it, and Simon touched on it as well. It's about member engagement more widely. It is quite frustrating. I see it at Essex and at Colchester, when a piece of work goes in, is sent to members. Members don't comment. The public think members aren't engaged in the process because members haven't commented. I would just re-emphasise the point about getting in touch with your local representative to get their views, because actually they should have read this, and if they haven't, obviously you can vote them out. And I do think it actually is incumbent on us all to make sure we're engaged, because I've seen it before where someone turns around and said, oh, I didn't know we were doing this, but actually a year ago we were sent the project. So I just want to stress that point, because sometimes it feels like the council gets the impression that it's not engaging the wider members, but we do get so much material and briefing opportunities, etc. So I can only commend the work done on that for reaching out to the wider council as well. We're just the decision-making body this evening. So I just wanted to stress that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We did have a number of workshops and briefings which members did contribute to, so I don't think that should be forgotten in the analysis. There's been a lot of consultation. We have put those of us who contributed to that, members were very much at the heart of it, and yeah, our views have been taken into account. Okay, I'm going to move to the vote. The recommendations are that the local plan committee adopt the city centre master plan as a supplementary planning document, and that the committee is also asked to revoke the St Botolph's Quarter master plan of 2005 and the Better Town Centre supplementary planning document of 2012, as both will be superseded by the master plan. They also predate national and local planning policy. Can I see all those in favour? Please show. That's unanimous, right?
That is unanimous, Chair.
Unanimous. Thank you very much, members. It's not time to go yet because they've been waiting very patiently, Mr. Kilshaw and Mr. Urquhart, to have the general have your say. So, Mr. Kilshaw, if you want to come forward, you have 3 minutes. A bell will sound after 2 and then again after 3, and the time will start when you hit the button. Thank you. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Chairman, Council. The last few have your say sessions saw local and national experts queuing up to inform Council of the extraordinarily high wildlife value found on Middlewick, which show that the information in Stantec's ecological evidence base responsible for its inclusion in the local plan is now significantly outdated. These included the head of ECOS, the Council's former advisor on this proposal, no less, who now made it quite clear that they're against this development. The RSPB also explained that their example of grassland creation at Minsmere, held up by Stantec as how losses on Middlewick could be mitigated, is not suitable due to the very different conditions and even the objectives at their site. Others, myself included, have pointed out several times the omissions, the poor survey practices, the survey limitations noted within the Stantec report, and the woeful undervaluing of Middlewick. And we now know the mitigation land, which they dismissed as arable, with little ecological value, which we've since found is not the case. You should have also received correspondence recently summarising the above and much more, so should be all fully aware of the current situation. Given what all of us now know, and over myself and over 3,000 members of Save Middlewick Group, many other more from allied groups, local communities and the wider area, we really would like to see Middlewick removed from the plan and risk of development. So with the above in mind, I'd like to ask 3 questions. Does Council accept that the mitigation plan is completely undermined from Stantec? Their report is fundamentally flawed. It's out of date anyway, so if you're following Chartered Institute guidelines, then you'll have to bin it. And secondly, would you acknowledge that in light of recent information and with hindsight, the Stantec report failed to make the case for inclusion in the local plan in the first place? And thirdly, by what mechanism can Council remove a site if it becomes clear that the supported ecological evidence is found to be inaccurate to the extent that the site should never have been included in the first place? I keep hearing it's safer in the plan if it could be designated as a country park perhaps, but I don't think you can do that. But there you go.
Yeah, Mr. Kilshaw, if we wait there, and perhaps Karen can update us where we are, particularly with that, the Stantec report, and that, and where we're going with the local plan review, particularly in relation to Middlewick.
Yeah, certainly. What I don't want to do is to, I'm probably not going to be able to provide you 3 detailed responses to your questions, because we've had, as you're aware, a lot of information come in from various parties, which deserves proper consideration. So that work is underway to provide a comprehensive response to the questions that have been posed by NFORM and the Colchester Natural History Society. I think what I can say here, though, is that there is a plan-making process to be followed. We can't simply remove one site from the plan. We've been through this in the past, and there's knock-on implications for doing that. We could do a focused review, but even then, when we've undertaken that, it's not straightforward. And for something as significant as this, there really wouldn't be any merit in doing that because of the knock-on implications and the time it takes. So there is a review of the local plan, and this committee will consider reports in the future on how we take that forward. And that will include, as we've said before, a review of all the sites that are in the current local plan and which will remain undeveloped at that point in time. So there's a process for doing that. And another point of reassurance, hopefully, is that we have commissioned ecologists to do some work for us, and the Colchester Natural History Society have informed the appointment of those consultants, both in terms of reviewing the brief and suggesting some people or companies that we went out to seek tenders back from. So I hope that gives you some reassurance in advance of a more detailed response coming out in the next week or two.
Thank you. You have another minute, Mr. Kilshaw.
Is it the case then that it cannot be taken out of the plan? It would be too complex or time consuming, so it can't be taken out of the plan. Surely under review it can be taken out. If the information as we know now that got it in the plan in the first place, a lot of it is nonsense, really. It's undervalued nonsense.
Yes, Karen.
I think there's a little bit of confusion here. We have Middlewick is allocated in the current adopted local plan. We cannot simply remove it from that plan. We will be producing a new local plan which will include site allocations. At that stage, Middlewick might be in the local plan, it might not be in the local plan. But that is the opportunity. It's not a case of removing it from an adopted local plan. Has that helped clarify the situation?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
The only other thing I would say is independent.
You're testing me now, Mr. Kilshaw.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I thought I had a minute.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. Carry on.
I was just going to say independent surveys are welcome and of course necessary, but I would suggest that they concentrate on, or they first undertake an updated biological data search, because a lot has changed since they carried out their report in 2020. Concentrate on that, or perhaps with the time they save by concentrating on that, they could then concentrate on the actual footprint of the build, which seems to be a complete blank in the original one, in the original Stantec report, which got it in the plan. So they're going to find that the data that's present now is going to be vastly superior to what it was.
Thank you, Mr. Kilshaw. You can rest assured that this committee will take all that evidence and information on board, but we have to do it in a certain way to meet planning regulations and guidelines and how local plan committees work. But we are very aware of the new information and the status of the Stantec report, and we're looking forward to the officers coming with us with that evidence and the new ecological report, and we will take a decision based on that evidence. Thank you. Mr. Urquhart, please. Again, thank you for your patience. Sorry to have kept you so long. You have 3 minutes. The bell will sound after 2 and then again after 3.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm just reiterating lots of the points that Richard has just made. Obviously, I read a statement out at the Local Plan Review Committee meeting a month ago. So I'll introduce myself, Dougal Urquhart. So I am the chair of Colchester Natural History Society. So we have been involved in this process for a few years. I've stepped in and obviously just in the last, I've been chair for the last couple of years or so. You've just received a letter copied in that was sent to the planning team. So all the councillors received that letter. And that's, hopefully you've had a chance to read that. It's quite a big document, but it's full of information, and part of it, it describes 30 pillars. And if you try and spend a moment reading that, those are 30 reasons why the original plan, the Stantec report, we feel is not credible. The 30 pillars we liken to a building, if you like. So take away any of those pillars of evidence and the whole thing's going to crumble down. So so please have a read of that. There's also a web link that's on that, I think it's described on that first page or second page, to further documents. So if you could have another look at those if you want any more information. And the document obviously has been signed It's come from the Essex Field Club and ourselves, Colchester Natural History Society. The Essex Field Club were responsible for a lot of the survey work, and members of the CNHS, our society, were assisting in those surveys. And I myself was out there and actually went inside the actual ranges as well. I've been out on the ranges with my moth trap as well as part of the Essex Moth Group. So we have been involved. Bug Life have been aware of the data that was collected last year, so they've now designated an important invertebrate area, so it's now of national significance. Natural England have also written to the planning team, planning department, and this was just before Christmas time, reiterating the importance of the site, reiterating that the council needs to take due regard to the planning policies, and they will reserve the right to reconsider whether it needs to be SSSI. It meets those criteria, so they're ready to step in. Just want to say it is an important public amenity, a really valued open space as well. So it needs withdrawing from the local plan. So that's all I'll have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, I can assure you, we hear it, we get it, we just have to do it properly and procedurally to meet the regulations that we're working under. But thank you very much for your contribution tonight. Okay, members, I think that's it. Thank you much for your attendance and for your decisions tonight, and have a safe journey home, especially those of you who are cycling. Thanks.